If you're counting on Social Security to cover your bills next year, you need to hear this number. Because the early data is in, and honestly, it's not what most retirees were hoping for. We're looking at the very first cold, hard estimate for the 2027 cost of living adjustment, and the math is pointing towards something we haven't seen in a few years. If you think your check is just going to magically keep pace with your rising grocery bill, your rising Medicare premiums, or your property taxes, you might be in for a very tight budget come January. I'm going to walk you through the exact prediction that just came out, why this specific calculation matters more for next year than it has in the recent past, and the 3-step checkup you should do right now to protect your monthly cash flow before the official announcement locks us all in. Because waiting until the Social Security Administration makes it official in October is how millions of seniors get blindsided by a number that looks okay on paper but feels terrible in real life. Welcome back. If we haven't met yet, I've spent decades digging through the fine print of retirement planning, and I focus on making sure you never get surprised by the government math that dictates your income. Today, we are laser focused on what your 2027 Social Security check is likely to look like. I know there's a lot of noise out there, and you might have heard rumors of a massive increase or a zero increase, and the truth sits somewhere in the middle, but the nuance is where your security lies. To understand where we're going in 2027, we have to look at what just happened. If you've been a recipient for a while, you remember the historic 8.7% increase we got in 2023. That felt like a lifeline because inflation was raging, and the COLA actually matched the pain we were feeling at the pump and the checkout counter. Then, as inflation cooled a little, we settled into a 3.2% bump for 2024, followed by a much smaller 2.5% increase for 2025. Now here is the critical headline for your upcoming 2027 check. The early inflationary data, which is calculated using the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, or CPI-W, is currently trending toward a COLA that lands somewhere between 2.2 and 2.3%. Let that sink in. If the trend holds, and we are watching the data month by month, your 2027 raise will likely be the lowest we've seen since 2021, back before inflation took off. Now, you might hear 2.2% and think, well, at least it isn't zero. A raise is a raise. But that's the trap. We have to look at what economists call the real income value. If your Social Security check goes up by 2.2%, but Medicare Part B premiums go up by a higher percentage, or your housing costs, insurance, and food are still climbing at a 3 or 4% clip, you are actually losing buying power. You're getting more dollars, but those dollars are shrinking in value faster than they're growing. This is what I call the silent COLA erosion. It doesn't feel like a cut. So the government doesn't call it a cut, but your wallet absolutely knows the difference when the month ends and there's less left over. Let's talk about the elephant in the room that makes the 2027 adjustment uniquely dangerous. For millions of you, the 2025 Medicare Part B premium increase took a sizable bite right out of your net check. The annual Part B premium rose to $185 per month for most enrollees. Because Medicare premiums are typically deducted directly from your Social Security payment, a small COLA can be completely vaporized by a premium hike. Think about this math clearly. If your net check is $1,500 and you receive a 2.2% increase, you're looking at a raise of roughly $33. If Medicare then raises the Part B premium by just $10 or $15, which is historically very common, half of your COLA has vanished before you even buy a gallon of milk. This is the squeeze that makes the 2027 prediction so vital to plan for right now. So why are the numbers dropping from the higher COLAs we got used to? The Federal Reserve has been battling to crush inflation for years, and they've largely succeeded. The overall rate of price increases is cooling, which is good news for the cost of borrowing and the price stability of goods. However, a cooling inflation rate mathematically guarantees a smaller cost of living adjustment, because the adjustment isn't based on how high prices are, but on how fast they are rising. That's a crucial distinction. Prices are still high. They just aren't accelerating as quickly, and your COLA only reacts to the acceleration, not the absolute price level. This is why you can go to the store, see a carton of eggs cost twice what it did 3 years ago, and receive a tiny raise. The system sees that eggs didn't spike this quarter, even if they never came back down. Let's look ahead at the timeline because you need to know when the picture solidifies. The Social Security Administration calculates the final COLA using data from the third quarter, specifically July, August, and September. We are currently watching the monthly inflation reports like a hawk. If we see a sudden spike in gas prices over the summer, or if housing data remains stubbornly high, that 2.2% estimate could drift up slightly to maybe 2.6 or 2.7%. On the other hand, if oil prices collapse or the economy slows down sharply, we could be staring at a number below 2%. That would be the worst-case scenario for seniors on a fixed income, because it would barely cover a single line item increase in your budget. So, what do you do right now to get ahead of a potential 2.2% 2027 COLA? First, you need to project your gross increase. Take your current 2026 monthly benefit amount and multiply it by 0.022. That's your estimated raise. Write that number down. Next, subtract the current Medicare premium you're paying. If you're in an income-related monthly adjustment amount bracket, or IRMA, because your income is higher, you're already paying more than $185 and you need to see if that bracket threshold will push you into paying even more if the income limits aren't adjusted favorably. The second step is to actually forecast your expenses. Look at your current monthly spending on utilities, groceries, and insurance premiums. Ask yourself, if my raise is only $30 or $40, and my property tax goes up by $20 and my home insurance jumps by $50, where do I bridge the gap? You need to identify the bridge now, not in December. The third step, and this is something I urge every viewer to do before the official announcement hits in October, is to open your My Social Security account online. Once the COLA is finalized, your personalized benefit statement updates with your exact new gross amount for January 2027. But if you wait until you get the mailed notice in December, you've lost months of budgeting time. Looking at that statement digitally as soon as it drops allows you to immediately calculate your net deposit after Medicare and tax withholding, so you can adjust your automatic transfers and bill payments before the holidays. That alone saves you from the January surprise where you check your bank account, expecting one number, and seeing something lower because the deductions changed. There's a psychological aspect we have to address as well. When COLA drops low after a period of high adjustments, it creates what I call entitlement shock. You get accustomed to seeing a bigger jump annually, and then suddenly the increase is negligible. This is the year where you cannot afford to just shrug and accept the number. You need to proactively audit your other senior benefits. Many of you qualify for programs that help with Medicare savings, food assistance, or utility discounts, and a low COLA year is exactly when you press the button to see if you meet the income thresholds. If your income is staying relatively flat due to a low raise, you might now slide into eligibility for a program you were previously making just a few dollars too much to receive. We also have to watch the political landscape. There's no need to dive into partisan politics, but legislation regarding the CPI-E, which is an experimental consumer price index for the elderly, is always floating around Congress. The argument is that seniors spend more on healthcare and housing, so the current CPI-W undercounts your real inflation. If any bill gains traction this year, it could alter the calculation formula, but as it stands right now, the rules for 2027 are unchanged, and we are tied to that wage earner index. That's why our planning assumption is strictly that 2.2% zone. Let me give you a real-world scenario of what this looks like. Mary is a 72-year-old widow receiving an average benefit of $1,900 a month. Under a 2.2% COLA, her gross goes up about $42. Her Part B premium has consistently gone up about $7 to $10 a year. Plus, she has a Part D prescription drug plan that's creeping up. She might see a net increase of just $20 a month, yet her rent just went up $35. Mary is in the hole every single month unless she cuts a prescription or reduces her food quality. This is not dramatic fiction. This is the reality for millions. And it's why we are talking about 2027 now, not in 7 months. For those of you who are married and both receiving benefits, double the squeeze applies. Your household COLA is applied to 2 checks, but the Medicare deductions also come out of both checks. If your combined net increase is $50 or $60, but you have one car repair or a dental bill that Medicare won't cover, the entire annual raise is wiped out in a single afternoon. This is why I always recommend building a COLA buffer in a high-yield savings account specifically earmarked for these shortfall years. If you don't have one, start one with whatever small amount you can transfer automatically each month. When 2027 arrives and you realize the net increase isn't covering your rising costs, you tap that buffer rather than reaching for a credit card with a 29% interest rate. Let's bring it back to the singular focus of this update. The 2027 COLA is currently predicted to be roughly 2.2%, marking a significant downshift from the more generous adjustments you've seen since the pandemic. Prices are not falling. They are just rising more slowly. And that distinction is the reason your check won't be increasing as much as you might need it to. By logging into your My Social Security account once the data firms up later this year, and by mapping out your expected net deposit against your rising expenses today, you remove the element of shock. You don't want to be standing at the mailbox in late December or staring at a bank app in January feeling your stomach drop because the math wasn't what you expected. Remember, these projections can shift slightly. We still have months of economic data to process, and a summer surge in energy prices or a sudden jump in healthcare costs could nudge the number a little higher. But don't bet on a windfall. Bet on the data. The current trend is your honest warning to tighten the plan, check your eligibility for assistance programs, and protect your cash flow now. If this breakdown helped you see why that tiny percentage point difference translates to real money in your life, Please hit the like button so the algorithm knows to keep delivering these financial alerts to your screen. Make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell turned on, because the moment the official 2027 COLA is announced, I'll have a complete breakdown up within hours so you know exactly what your January deposit will look like. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. How would a 2.2% increase impact your household budget? Are your costs rising faster than this predicted COLA? Drop a comment below and let's start a conversation that actually helps other seniors realize they aren't the only ones feeling the squeeze. Thanks for spending this time with me, and as always, stay informed and stay ahead.